Sexual energy can keep spending itself years after the sexual moment ends. A man hears an old song beside his wife, and his breathing changes before he chooses a thought. His body exposed a destination. The charge once tied that song to a person, a period of life, and a version of himself. I'm going to show you where sexual force goes after the obvious event is over, and why the deepest destination can live inside your identity for decades. The first answer changes the whole retention conversation. Sexual force leaves more than a physical ending, it can train importance. An experience arrives with enough charge, attention gathers around it, memory gives it a place, and later a small cue can reopen the route. That is why the song hits before the story. The body-mind learned the route long ago. Picture the man more clearly. He is 47. He is driving home with his wife after dinner. They have been together for 16 years. The radio catches an old song from his 20s. Nothing dramatic happens outside the car. Traffic keeps moving. His wife keeps talking, yet his chest lifts slightly and his eyes go distant for half a second. He sees a balcony from another city. He remembers a woman he dated when he was 27. He remembers the danger in that relationship, the breakups, the reunions, the way a single message could change his whole week. His wife notices the silence and asks if he is okay. He says yeah. That tiny scene contains almost the whole lesson. The old woman is physically absent. The old relationship is finished. The charge still has an address inside him. A cue reached the address, and the system answered. That is sexual residue in a form you can recognize without believing anything mystical first. Lot uses karma to describe action memory that keeps influencing the next response. Psychology uses different language for learning, association, reward, memory, and cues. The maps come from different traditions. The human event is easy to recognize. Experience teaches return. A body can learn what predicts pleasure, excitement, relief, approval, danger, reunion, or sexual reward. Later, the prediction itself can carry force. The song becomes more than sound. A particular perfume becomes more than smell. A certain type of distance inside a relationship becomes more than distance. The cue starts pulling on a history. This is where the older sexual energy teaching needs an upgrade. Semen retention asks a valuable bodily question. What happened to the physical sexual substance? This video asks a second question. What did the charged experience teach your attention to seek again? A man can conserve seminal fluid while his attention spends the whole evening inside sexual imagery. The physical body holds one thing, while the mind rehearses another route again and again. That route can become easier to enter every week. The conservation may be real. The training is also real. Those two truths can exist together. The man in the car has no desire to destroy his marriage. He loves his wife. He also feels the strange pull of an old life for 3 seconds. That pull deserves intelligence rather than shame. The useful question asks what the song actually woke up. At first he assumes it woke up the woman. That answer is incomplete. It woke up a whole state. 27 years old. Living in another city, fewer responsibilities, more uncertainty, more ego, more hunger to be wanted, more fear of losing the relationship, more sexual electricity every time the woman came back after pulling away. The song carried an entire version of him. There is a difference between wanting an experience and enjoying the experience once it arrives. You know this outside sexuality. A person can spend days obsessed with buying something, finally get it, and feel the anticipation collapse almost immediately. The chase carried more energy than possession. Sexual wanting can develop the same split. The body learns cues that predict a charged reward. A message from one person appears on the phone, and the whole internal temperature changes. The person answers. Relief arrives. 5 minutes later, the actual conversation feels ordinary. Then distance returns. The other person becomes uncertain again, and wanting rises again. Look at the shape of that life. The strongest moment may be the approach. Uncertainty creates anticipation. Anticipation creates focus. Focus makes the person feel important. The eventual reunion releases the pressure for a little while. Then the cycle needs another period of distance to rebuild its voltage. A relationship can therefore train the body to associate sexual intensity with instability. That is very different from saying instability equals love. The body simply learns from repeated pairings. A man who spent years inside the rhythm of withdrawal and reunion can later meet a steady woman and experience peace as strangely quiet. She calls when she says she will. She expresses care directly. She avoids dramatic disappearances. The old alarm system has less to do. He may call that lack of chemistry. Sometimes chemistry truly is weak. Sometimes the old body map expected danger to help produce the charge. Discernment separates those situations. The man in our car begins seeing his 20s differently. He remembers how much of the old relationship happened inside, waiting for a reply, waiting for her to come back, waiting to find out whether the breakup was final, waiting to see whether she chose him again. He remembers calling the reunion's passion. Now he sees the preparation that came before them. His body spent days gathering around one question: will she return? When she returned, the release felt enormous. The relationship taught him a particular grammar of wanting. Years later, a song can still speak that grammar in 1 second. Here, sexual force becomes learned importance, and I want to keep the wording precise because a vague energy story becomes useless very quickly. The song carries no magical substance by itself. The song became connected with a period of high charge. The nervous system, memory, attention, emotion, and personal meaning learned the connection together. Lot can add the karmic lens without pretending that karma replaces biology. The body is the laboratory. The spiritual reading sits beside the human evidence. That gives us a better definition of sexual imprint. An imprint is a route that became easy to reopen. Like the video, if you want Lot to keep rebuilding the old sexual energy teachings at this depth. The route can carry a person, but the person is only one part of it. It can also carry the age you were, the amount of freedom you felt, the danger you tolerated, the validation you received, the private identity you built, and the future you imagined. The deeper route is layered. That is why memory can surprise you. A man sees an old photograph and feels desire for a life he would hate to live again. Read that carefully. A return would mean the old fighting, the uncertainty, the cramped apartment, the financial instability, and the version of himself who could spend a whole night waiting beside the phone. He remembers enough to know that life would exhaust the man he is now. Yet the image carries charge. The charge proves history became vivid there. It gives zero command to recreate the history. That distinction is spiritual maturity. Desire can report a route without giving an order. The body can remember without choosing a return. You, as a soul moving through this body, can receive the report and still choose the life in front of you. This is one reason the old Tantra traditions deserve a more careful hearing than the internet usually gives them. There was never one universal tantric diagram where sexual energy had a single approved destination. Different traditions built different body maps, different ritual languages, different approaches to sexual substances, and different ways of relating desire to spiritual transformation. Some streams treated sexual substances with ritual seriousness. Some used sexual union inside tightly defined advanced systems. Some moved the entire subject into inner symbolism and consciousness. The shared pressure was transformation. Embodied force could become material for realization when carried with discipline and understanding. For this video, Trika gives us the cleanest spiritual route, Trika is a non-dual Shaiva tradition that treats reality as an expression of divine consciousness. Desire, sensation, pleasure, fear, beauty, memory, and ordinary life all arise inside that one field. The path therefore gains intelligence by recognizing the divine ground inside experience while still reading consequence carefully. That means desire becomes revealing. Sexual desire shows where attention contracts. One image can suddenly become enormous. The body may reach for union while the ego quietly reaches for possession. Pleasure can open tenderness, or it can keep feeding compulsion when the person behind the pleasure disappears from view. Another human being can remain fully real inside desire, or become a role inside somebody else's private movie. That is a far more useful sacred sex teaching than decorating desire with holy vocabulary. The source earns its place when it changes how you read your own life. Our man in the car has just encountered a perfect Trika problem without knowing the word Trika. The old song, the old woman, the current wife, his embarrassment, his nostalgia, his body reaction, and the awareness seeing all of it belong to one present experience. He can fight the memory and make the fight central. He can worship the memory and make the past central. He can recognize the entire event and learn from it. Recognition gives the force another direction. The old retention era map often used the language of storing energy as if the human being were a battery. That image helped explain discipline. It also leaves out the most interesting part of a living system. A battery stores charge. A living being learns. That difference changes everything. Sexual experience can change what catches the eye next time. It can change what kind of uncertainty feels exciting. It can change what type of attention feels valuable. It can change which forms of closeness feel safe. It can change what the person expects from being desired. It can change how rejection gets interpreted. It can change how the body experiences familiarity. The force becomes history. History becomes expectation. Expectation meets the next person before the conscious mind finishes introducing itself. Now imagine our 47-year-old man years earlier, during the beginning of his marriage. His wife was steady from the start. She liked him clearly. She had her own life, her own work, her own friends. She showed affection without turning every disagreement into disappearance. He was attracted to her. He also felt oddly restless after the first year. The old pattern had taught him that emotional danger created sexual focus. His new relationship gave him less danger. His body experienced stability and had to learn a new kind of charge. He could have interpreted that quiet as proof the marriage lacked passion. He stayed long enough to discover another possibility. Familiarity can deepen erotic life when the person behind the familiar face keeps becoming more real. This takes us from cue learning into relationship. Sexual force can help make one specific person increasingly significant. Shared pleasure, affection, vulnerability, private humor, touch, repair after conflict, and years of ordinary life begin connecting to the same human being. One face gathers hundreds of experiences behind it. A stranger can offer novelty. A long partner can carry depth. Those forms of charge feel different. The first can arrive fast. The second can become layered. A mature sexual life learns how to recognize depth as energy too. Think about what 16 years with one person does to a body. Her hand on his shoulder carries history. The first year sits inside the touch. The year their child was born sits inside it. The argument they almost failed to repair sits inside it. The hospital waiting room sits inside it. The weekend they laughed until 2 a.m. sits inside it. The month when money was tight sits inside it. The period when desire went quiet and eventually returned sits inside it. One touch can contain a whole relationship because the relationship gave the cue its depth. This is sexual energy becoming bond rather than chase. The bond changes the destination of desire. At 27, our man wanted to know whether he had been chosen. At 47, the deeper question is whether he can remain present with the person who actually chose him for 16 years. That is a different spiritual test. The old relationship asked whether he could survive uncertainty. The marriage asks whether he can survive being known. Being known is quieter, and for the ego, sometimes more dangerous. A stranger sees the version you present. A long partner sees patterns. She knows what happens to your voice when you are avoiding something. She knows your false calm. She knows when you are tired, embarrassed, defensive, generous, afraid, or full of love. Sexuality inside that relationship loses some of the costume. The person beside you eventually meets the body carrying your history. This is where "don't tell her" begins turning into the real thumbnail proposition. The secret sexual story can stay inside your head. The training still walks into the relationship with you. A man can keep every old fantasy private and still make his wife live with the comparison those fantasies created. He can keep every insecurity private and still demand reassurance from her every week. He can keep every memory private and still become strangely absent when a cue wakes the old state. The mouth can hide the archive. The relationship meets the carrier. That is a much deeper warning than simple confession. The spiritual question asks what the hidden sexual history has trained you to become around another human being. And now the script turns. Our man thinks the song woke desire for the old woman. He keeps looking at the event from that angle for a day or two. Then he notices something strange. He has no serious wish to call her. He has no desire to leave his wife. He remembers enough of the old relationship to know that returning would be chaos. So what exactly pulled on him in the car? The deeper answer embarrasses him more than the old attraction. He misses the man he was around that attraction. That answer changes what the old memory means. The person was the doorway. The destination was a self-state. He misses being 27. He misses waking up with fewer responsibilities. What he misses is a whole identity compressed into that period. Weekends that felt open-ended, a younger body, easy sexual attention, and the dangerous uncertainty that made ordinary life feel intensely alive. The woman in memory became one of the strongest symbols for that version of himself. The old woman carried the key to that identity in memory. The song opened the room. This changes the map completely. Sexual force can attach itself to a version of you. A person becomes the cue for that version. This is why somebody can obsess over an ex while having very little interest in the actual current person that ex became. Memory freezes the other human being at the age where the imprint formed. The mind protects a photograph while time keeps changing the living person somewhere else. The object of desire becomes partly symbolic. It carries youth. It carries status. It carries rebellion. It carries proof of being wanted. It carries an old body. It carries the fantasy of a road left behind. Our man is discovering that sexual nostalgia can be nostalgia for selfhood. That is forbidden knowledge worth having, because it stops him from making the wrong person responsible for the ache. Imagine what happens when someone fails to see this. He feels the old charge. He interprets the charge as destiny. He decides the current marriage must be dead because the old memory feels vivid. He contacts the old person. The first reply feels electric. The electricity appears to confirm the interpretation. Then real life enters. The old person has aged too. She has a different life. Her habits changed. Her priorities changed. The ancient relationship exists mainly in memory now. The man discovers that the charge was carrying 20 years of compressed identity rather than a realistic map of who either person is today. That discovery can come after enormous damage. So yes, sexual energy goes somewhere. Sometimes it goes into a time capsule. The capsule can sit inside you for decades. This is where aging enters sexuality on a level deeper than performance. A body changes across time. Social attention changes. Hormonal conditions change. Energy changes. Health changes people. Work changes people. Parenting changes people. The sexual self that felt obvious at 25 can become too small for the life being lived at 50. A person can respond by fighting time. Another person can let sexuality mature with time. Those paths feel very different. The fight against time makes desirability carry a huge burden. Attention from another person becomes proof that the old self still exists. A flirtation can feel like a temporary victory over aging. An affair can feel like a portal back into the body someone remembers having. A younger partner can become a mirror for an identity someone is afraid to lose. The sexual event now carries mortality pressure. That explains why the charge can feel far larger than the actual relationship deserves. The person is reaching for time through another body. This deserves compassion and clarity. Aging exposes where desirability became identity. A changing body can therefore become a spiritual teacher without anybody pretending aging is easy. The question changes from, can I still produce the same response from the world, to what can intimacy become in the body I actually inhabit now? That second question has more freedom in it. Later life sexuality can become more relational, more tender, more humorous, more direct, and more grounded in mutual knowledge. Performance can lose some of its throne. Intimacy can gain depth. A couple may care less about reproducing the emotional temperature of their 20s and more about creating a sexual life that belongs to the people they became. That is transmutation across time. The force changes meaning as the person changes. A woman in her late 50s can show the same principle from another direction. Imagine she spent 30 years with one man. They built a home, raised children, fought, repaired, aged, and learned each other's bodies through several versions of life. Then he dies. 2 years later, she feels sexual attraction towards somebody new. The first reaction in her body is surprise. The second reaction is guilt. Her marriage carried decades of sexual memory, tenderness, conflict, touch, private jokes, illness, caregiving, and grief. Desire toward a new person can therefore feel like a violation of the old bond, even though the old bond already belongs to a completed physical life. This is sexual energy meeting grief. The charge carries two truths at once: love for the person who died and evidence that life still moves through the body that remains. That can be a difficult spiritual moment. The body says alive. Memory says loyal. The personality may interpret the new attraction as betrayal. A deeper reading gives the force more room. The new attraction can represent continuing aliveness without erasing the marriage. The old bond can remain sacred while the body begins responding to the world again. Sexual energy has changed function. During the marriage, it helped build one shared life. During grief, it can become evidence that the surviving person still belongs to embodied life. That is a profound destination. The woman may discover that the first difficult step has little to do with sex itself. The real pressure sits inside identity. She knew herself as his wife for 3 decades. Another person's attention asks her to inhabit a self that exists after that identity. Now desire opens an existential question. Who am I when the person who knew this body for 30 years is gone? Who am I when somebody new sees me without knowing the history written into this face? Who am I when erotic feeling returns after grief trained the body toward absence? Sexual force becomes a threshold between identities. That is why later life desire can carry more emotional weight than the surface event suggests. The new person may be attractive, and the attraction may also press on grief, loyalty, age, body image, family expectations, and the question of whether a new chapter deserves permission to exist. The sexual current reveals the whole knot. This scene also corrects a male-centered mistake in sexual energy teaching. Seminal fluid gives the male body an obvious substance around which entire spiritual systems can build language. Female sexual energy proves the wider field immediately. Desire, arousal, bonding, memory, fantasy, grief, creativity, identity, and spiritual pressure still exist without a male seed model explaining them. That should make a man more precise too. His sexual force has always been bigger than semen. The seed can remain an important symbol in bodily reality, while the full field includes attention, learning, relationship, emotional state, imagination, conduct, and creation. A complete teaching has to survive contact with both bodies and with life stages far beyond reproduction. Imagine the woman eventually going on a date. She laughs more than she expected. The new man tells a story badly and loses his place. She finds that endearing. On the drive home, she cries, "The tears and attraction belong to the same evening." That is life carrying two currents without forcing one to erase the other. Her late husband remains part of her history. The new attraction belongs to the present. Grief loses its position as the sole proof of loyalty. Aliveness stops feeling like betrayal. The sexual force has become permission to re-enter life. That is a completely different destination from conquest, validation, or compulsive release. It gives the title another level of depth. Where sexual energy goes depends partly on the life it enters. The same charge can become a chase in one period, a bond in another, grief in another, and renewed embodiment in another. The force remains recognizable while the human meaning changes with time. Our man sits with this for several days. The memory loses some of its glamour once he sees the time capsule inside it. He starts noticing how often he has used sexual desirability as a private measurement of youth. He remembers the pleasure of being noticed in his 20s. He remembers how easily attention from women could change his posture for an entire evening. He sees pieces of that habit still alive in him. He enjoys being attractive to his wife. He also enjoys being seen by strangers. The second reward carries a different flavor. His wife knows him. A stranger sees the surface and can project anything onto it. That makes outside attention unusually clean as validation. The stranger can admire the image without seeing the ordinary man underneath it. Now the old sexual force has moved into status. The reward says, "I still have it." Those 4 words can quietly drive clothing choices, gym obsession, flirtation, spending, social media behavior, career displays, and private comparison. The outer actions can carry many healthy reasons too. The hidden percentage is what deserves examination. Sexual energy often rides inside another motivation rather than appearing with a label on its forehead. This is where money and ambition can become sexually charged without turning money itself into sex. A man can build because he loves building. He can also love the imagined gaze that success will bring. Both motives can live inside one project. The same thing can happen with beauty, status, fitness, fashion, public influence, and artistic performance. The work gathers sexual meaning because the future reward includes being seen differently. Then, success arrives and exposes the bargain. If the attention finally comes and the old insecurity remains, the person discovers that the surface reward reached the wrong depth. The money was real. The attention was real. The wound still wants another dose. That is the wanting and enjoying split appearing in a grown man's entire lifestyle. The chase can become stronger than a rival because a rival fails to repair the identity underneath it. The old tantric language of transformation becomes useful again here. Transformation means a force changes form while retaining intensity. Sexual pressure can become pursuit. It can also become sustained creative work when attention, skill, and direction carry the charge into something that outlives the impulse. You have already seen this kind of conversion in other parts of life. Fear becomes preparation, grief becomes service, anger becomes a boundary, excitement becomes work. Sexual pressure can become art, discipline, courage, tenderness, devotion, or focused creation when the living being gives it a wider destination. That process requires more than keeping fluid inside the body. The attention has to have somewhere worthy to live. A man who keeps seminal fluid while spending 6 hours in fantasy has conserved one expression and surrendered another. A man who feels sexual pressure remains whole, builds, loves, speaks clearly, and keeps his word is displaying another form of conservation: coherence. Coherence is the word I trust more here. Body, attention, speech, values, and action begin facing the same direction. Clenched control looks different. Clenched control keeps checking the forbidden object. It builds identity around resistance. It needs a scoreboard. It can make a streak feel like spiritual rank. Coherence has a quieter feel. Desire can appear without rearranging the entire day. Attraction can be strong while work keeps moving. Rejection can sting while dignity remains. A fantasy can appear and pass through awareness without receiving another hour of rehearsal. The force is present. The life stays wider than the force. That is command. This brings us into the shadow side of purity. A person can spend enormous sexual attention fighting sexuality. The image appears. Shame heats it. The person checks whether the image is gone. The check returns attention to the image. A vow forms. The vow becomes identity. The identity needs the forbidden object in the background, so the battle can continue proving purity. Now resistance has become another way of keeping the sexual object central. This is a real dark light lesson. The emotional sign changed from attraction to aversion. Importance stayed. The throne stayed occupied. That is why shame can preserve what clarity would eventually reorganize. Shame keeps the subject hot. Clarity asks what reward the fantasy supplies: power, relief, approval, escape from inadequacy, a younger self, a feeling of being chosen. Once the hidden reward becomes visible, the sexual image loses some of its mystery. The person can finally understand what the system has been trying to obtain through the image. The deeper hunger may be completely different from the sexual picture used to carry it. Our man saw this with his old song. He thought the pull was a woman. The deeper pull was youth, danger, validation, and an old self. That recognition changes what he does next. There is another layer underneath the person, the fantasy, and even the old identity. Sexual charge can become a way of changing state. Picture a man alone in a hotel after a brutal workday. He argued with a client. He ate badly. He has been awake since 5 in the morning. His body feels tight and his mind keeps replaying the meeting. Sexual imagery suddenly becomes appealing. Genuine desire can be present, and the image can also carry a promise. For 15 minutes, this pressure will disappear. The sought destination is relief. That changes how you read the urge. The sexual object becomes a vehicle for a state transition. Stress moves toward relief. Boredom moves toward stimulation. Loneliness moves toward the temporary feeling of contact. Insecurity moves toward the temporary feeling of being wanted. Grief moves toward aliveness. Anger moves toward power. The body learns the shortcut when the shortcut works often enough. A difficult emotion arrives. Sexual pursuit changes the internal weather. The system remembers the change. Next time the same emotion appears, the sexual route becomes available earlier. A person can sincerely describe this as strong sexual appetite, while part of the pattern is a highly practiced way of leaving stress. Desire remains real. The deeper intelligence comes from seeing every job desire has been hired to perform. Our man in the car recognizes this in his younger self. The old relationship gave him relief from a life that felt directionless. When the woman wanted him, career confusion disappeared for a while. Money worries disappeared. Questions about the man he was becoming disappeared. The relationship filled the whole screen. That intensity felt like love, partly because it erased everything else for a while. 20 years later, the song brings back the state of being consumed. There was relief inside that consumption. The adult life he has now carries mortgage payments, aging parents, work pressure, children getting older, and a body that asks different questions. The old memory offers one flash of a life where a single woman could become the entire problem. There is a strange luxury in having one dramatic problem when current life contains 10 ordinary responsibilities. That is why nostalgia can feel erotic. It offers compression. The world gets smaller for a second. The old person becomes the doorway into a simpler emotional universe. This gives him a better response than suppression. Suppression leaves the hidden job untouched. Once he sees that the memory offers escape from complexity, he can read the charge accurately. The question becomes, what state am I trying to enter through this sexual image? That question exposes the bargain. A fantasy may promise confidence. A flirtation may promise youth. Pornography may promise fast relief from stress. An affair may promise escape from an identity that feels overburdened. A reunion may promise correction of an old rejection. The sexual route can carry a deeper request. Once the request becomes clear, the person gains more than one way to answer it. Relief can come through rest, a completed conversation, creative absorption, movement, friendship, solitude, prayer, or a changed relationship to the problem itself. Confidence can grow through competence rather than repeated proof of desirability. Aliveness can return through risk, art, travel, service, learning, and honest change. The sexual route then becomes one expression of life rather than the only door into a desired state. That is inner freedom. This state regulation layer also explains why sexual preoccupation can rise and fall across different seasons of life. The body changes, the relationship changes, and the emotional jobs assigned to sexuality change too. A lonely season can make sexual attention feel like social oxygen. A grieving season can make erotic feeling feel like proof that life still moves. A period of humiliation can make being desired feel like restoration. A season of creative purpose can absorb some of the same intensity into work that feels deeply alive. The force keeps meeting the state the person is living inside. A mature sexual teaching therefore has to ask about the whole life around desire. The bedroom alone cannot explain the bedroom. Comment, time capsule, if the self-state behind the desire is clear to you. He could keep the whole thing secret. He has done nothing physically wrong. A psalm triggered memory. A feeling passed through the body. The situation needs no melodramatic confession. Yet he sees one place where silence has become costly. His wife noticed him disappear in the car. She knows him too well to miss it. He gave her a quick, "Yeah, I'm fine," and changed the subject. That small lie is where the thumbnail becomes human. Don't tell her can mean more than hiding an affair. It can mean hiding the place where sexual history still holds power, because admitting the truth feels embarrassing. The wife may never need every image in his archive. She does need the man in front of her to live honestly enough that old history stops governing their present through secrecy. The next evening they are in the kitchen, nothing cinematic. Food is cooling on 2 plates. Their child is in another room. His wife asks again whether something happened when that song came on. This time he answers cleanly. He tells her the song brought back an old relationship for a moment. Then he tells her the stranger part. The memory made him realize how much he misses being younger and how easily he still confuses being desired with feeling alive. That is a very different conversation from "I want my ex." He finally understands enough to tell the truth accurately. His wife can respond to reality instead of a fog. She may feel hurt. She may feel curious. She may laugh at part of it because she misses being 27 too. She may tell him about her own private relationship with age, desirability, and the body she used to have. Now sexual energy has entered speech. And speech can change the destination. A hidden pattern uses silence to keep its private shape. Once it becomes speakable, two people can relate to it together. The sexual force that had been feeding nostalgia can become intimacy because the memory has been converted into contact with the present partner. This is a completely different form of transmutation. No exotic technique appears. No ritual is required. The transformation happens through recognition, truthful speech, and a new relationship to the charge. The past becomes material for the present instead of a tunnel away from it. That is inner engineering in ordinary clothes. This also shows why sexual secrets are expensive. An event can last an hour while secrecy lasts 10 years. The body then carries vigilance far longer than pleasure. Memory has to track who knows what. Speech has to bend around protected areas. A partner's innocent question can produce a defensive reaction because the question accidentally touches the hidden room. The sexual event ended. The maintenance became the destination. That is where the force went. A person living two incompatible realities spends attention keeping both alive. The split can affect intimacy, eye contact, patience, sleep, mood, and the ease of being known. The secret becomes a structure. This pattern also appears in milder forms. A man can carry years of sexual media into a marriage through novelty expectations and attention habits, while remaining physically faithful. A woman can carry years of needing outside admiration into a marriage through comparison and testing, while loving her husband sincerely. A religious upbringing can carry sexual shame into an adult relationship through tension, secrecy, and difficulty receiving affection without inner judgment. An old betrayal can carry suspicion into a new relationship, even after every contact with the betrayer ends. The past survives as training. That is the thread connecting all of these cases. The training can change. A marriage with very little sex can make this even clearer because the force becomes visible through absence. Picture a couple in their late 40s sleeping on opposite sides of the same bed. Months have passed since intimacy felt easy. One partner remembers several rejected attempts and has stopped initiating. The other remembers periods where every affectionate touch seemed to carry pressure, so the body started bracing before contact even began. The room looks sexually quiet. The history inside the room is loud. A hand on the shoulder can carry the memory of expectation. Turning away can carry the memory of rejection. Going to bed early can carry relief. Staying up late can carry avoidance. A joke about sex can carry resentment. Silence can carry fear of starting another argument. Sexual energy has become posture. The force lives in what each body expects from the other. A simple instruction to increase frequency would miss the deeper pattern. Their bodies have learned different predictions around intimacy. One body predicts pressure, the other predicts rejection. Both predictions arrive before either person speaks. That means the path back requires a different kind of intelligence. The couple has to create experiences that change what closeness predicts. Affection can regain warmth without becoming a test. Honest speech can separate desire from obligation. Rejection can lose some of its sting when dignity stays intact. Desire can become speakable before it becomes an emergency. The sexual current then begins changing form inside the relationship. Resentment can soften into information. Fear can become a boundary that finally has language. Longing can become a conversation rather than a silent scorecard. The bed can slowly stop carrying the whole history of failure every time two people lie down. This takes us back to learning. The body learns danger through repetition. It can also learn safety through repetition. The first kind of learning narrows intimacy. The second gives intimacy room to breathe again. This couple may never return to the sexual rhythm they had at 30. Their life has changed. Their bodies have changed. The deeper win comes when sexuality belongs to the people they became rather than to a younger template they keep failing to reproduce. That is another form of freedom from time. The goal becomes a living sexual relationship instead of a museum dedicated to the early years. A living relationship can change shape. The force can become gentler and still carry depth. It can become less frequent and more honest. It can return after a long, quiet period with a different meaning. It can move into affection during seasons where the body has less appetite. It can reawaken through emotional repair. The point is, the relationship between force and truth. A couple gains power when sexuality stops being a courtroom where every touch proves desirability and every refusal proves rejection. Then, two adults can meet again. A living system keeps learning. This is where a stable relationship can become powerful rather than dull. Repeated safe intimacy gives the body new evidence. A partner remains present after disagreement. A vulnerable conversation ends in repair. Affection arrives without manipulation. Sexual contact belongs to mutuality rather than a test. Years of new experience can teach another grammar. Closeness can carry charge. Familiarity can carry charge. Peace can carry charge. The nervous system can learn a world where intensity and safety share the same room. That is a long-form sexual alchemy that rarely gets celebrated because it looks ordinary from outside. The quiet couple can be doing advanced work without calling it spiritual. They are learning how desire survives reality. Reality includes morning breath, bills, illness, changing bodies, annoying habits, family pressure, grief, responsibility, and years where one person's sexual energy rises while the other's drops. Fantasy gives you a body without history. Long intimacy gives you a person inside time. The spiritual test is whether desire can become more intelligent as reality becomes more complete. That is far beyond the chase. At this point, the man in our story understands where the old song went. It first carried him backward, then recognition changed its use. The song exposed a cue. The cue exposed a fear of aging. The fear exposed a dependency on desirability. The dependency exposed a place where his marriage needed more honest speech. The sexual charge became knowledge. This is the kind of chain a serious spiritual path wants. The original force stays powerful while its destination becomes more conscious. Then the old woman actually sends him a message a month later. Nothing explicit. She heard the same song somewhere and thought of him. A simple sentence appears on his phone. Now the teaching has to leave philosophy and enter conduct. He feels the body react. The cue still works. The old route still exists. Recognition has changed his relationship to the route. He sees the 27-year-old self inside the charge. He sees the old uncertainty. He sees the pleasure of being remembered. He sees the small ego thrill of knowing he still exists in somebody else's archive. Then he sees his current life. That is command. Command means awareness has enough room to hold the entire picture before action writes another line of karma. A streak cannot pass this test for him. A sexual philosophy cannot pass it. A source name cannot pass it. Conduct passes it. He can answer politely if that fits his life and his marriage. He can leave the message alone. He can speak to his wife if the situation deserves openness. The exact choice belongs to the actual relationship and its boundaries. The spiritual evidence appears in clarity, consent, honesty, and the absence of secret hunger taking command. The force bows to freedom. warmth, sex magic, magnetism, kundalini, retention, attraction, sacred union, and all the high-voltage language eventually meet. One ordinary fact: another human being stays free in front of you. That is where power talk gets tested. A man can feel enormous desire for his wife and still meet a night where she has no interest in sex. Her body may be tired, her mind may be full, she may simply want sleep. The sexual current inside him is real. Her freedom is real too. The immature ego experiences that moment as interruption. A mature sexual path experiences it as information. His desire can remain alive without turning her body into a solution he is owed. The force can move through disappointment and remain clean. He can still feel warmth toward her. He can still inhabit his own body without humiliation. He can still carry attraction without making the relationship pay for the fact that two living systems have different rhythms. That small scene tells me more about sexual command than 100 grand claims about magnetism. Freedom becomes even more important when attraction points outside a committed relationship. An attractive person appears, the body responds. The response proves a living nervous system, encountered a cue. The next action belongs to character. A person with inner command can acknowledge attraction without constructing a private destiny around it. The mind can appreciate beauty and keep the current relationship visible. The ego can survive the fact that desire exists without demanding a story. This is where the phrase sexual power deserves caution. Power that needs another person's submission has already exposed its weakness. Power that survives another person's freedom has more substance. The other person gets to remain a full conscious being. That one principle cleans up a huge amount of spiritual confusion. That principle separates attraction from permission, spiritual chemistry from compatibility, energetic intensity from authority, and jealousy from depth. One force can feel enormous inside you, while the other human being still belongs completely to their own life. A force can be sacred and still require discernment. Our man sees this inside the message from his old girlfriend. The thrill of being remembered comes first. Then imagination offers a tiny expansion. What if we kept talking? What if we met for coffee? What if the old electricity returned? The fantasy can build an entire road in seconds. He has learned enough to see the road before walking it. That is the power test. He recognizes the woman as a real person with her own current life. He recognizes his wife as a real person with her own right to the truth of the marriage they built. He recognizes himself as a man experiencing nostalgia, attraction, ego pleasure, and curiosity at the same time. All three realities can stay visible. Compulsion shrinks the picture until one feeling becomes the whole world. Command keeps the whole picture in frame. That distinction also protects the viewer from another trap, using retention as a certificate of superiority. A man can retain for a long period and become arrogant, brittle, sexually preoccupied, or obsessed with how others respond to him. The stored identity then becomes the disciplined man, and every interaction gets used to confirm the rank. Another man may carry less impressive numbers and show greater steadiness when rejected, greater honesty with a partner, stronger creative direction, and less dependence on sexual validation. The second life may contain more actual freedom. Numbers can describe behavior. Character describes what the behavior produced. This is why Lot treats cities and power the same way. An unusual capacity can become another crown for the small self. Sexual discipline can do the same thing when the ego uses it as social rank. The force becomes spiritual when it loosens the need for the crown. The real test keeps returning to freedom. This kind of freedom has one recognizable quality across the whole sexual life. Desire stays inside a larger human being. The body can feel the pull and keep choice. A partner can remain fully human instead of becoming a provider of validation or proof. A changing body can keep its dignity while the social gaze changes. Beauty can be seen without ownership, and rejection can hurt without turning pain into cruelty. That is a higher form of sexual strength. Power itself proves capacity. Character shows direction. The body deserves honesty here too. Sexual response belongs to a whole living system. The body brings circulation, nervous system activity, hormonal signaling, health, sleep, medication, age, and stress into the sexual field. The mind brings memory, expectation, attention, fantasy, interpretation, and history. Relationship brings trust, resentment, affection, pressure, play, grief, and the accumulated meaning two people have given each other over time. A mystical model becomes stronger when it respects that complexity. Lot can call sexual force life force and creative power while keeping symbolic language in its proper place. The body has its own biology. Spiritual language describes another layer of lived meaning, attention, discipline, and transformation. The two layers can speak to each other without one pretending to replace the other. That protects this teaching from the cheap promise that one sexual habit automatically creates charisma, money, physical superiority, or psychic power. The real human consequences are already serious enough. Sexuality can create life. It can reorganize a marriage. It can bind a song to an entire decade. It can teach the body to expect chaos before desire. It can make a person confuse being wanted with being worthy. It can also become one of the places where honesty, tenderness, discipline, and God contact become more embodied. There is plenty of sacred weight here. The same honesty sharpens semen retention. Lot still treats seminal conservation as a serious discipline inside our worldview. The mature version watches what happens to the rest of the man while he practices it. Imagine two men reaching the same number of retained days. The first spends hours in fantasy, measures his worth through female attention, becomes angry when desire receives no response, and uses the streak as proof that he has risen above other men. The second becomes steadier, less scattered, more focused in his work, cleaner in speech, and less desperate for sexual validation. The calendar gives them the same number. Their lives give two different answers. The body practice gained value through what it trained. That is the larger map this video adds to our older work. Seminal conservation can be one expression of discipline. Attention conservation is another. Emotional coherence is another. The ability to keep desire inside a life that still honors work, relationship, truth, and inner authority is another. The word retention then becomes richer. A man retains more than fluid when he stops giving every charged cue access to his whole mind. He retains direction. He retains dignity under rejection. He retains the energy required to build. He retains enough inner space to choose what deserves another hour of his life. That is a sexual force teaching I can stand behind without turning biology into mythology or restraint into a crown. The body is the laboratory, and you, as a soul, are the conscious being learning through it. Sexual experience gains spiritual value through what consciousness is able to make from it afterward. A mistake can become intelligence once the pattern becomes visible. Pleasure can deepen gratitude when another person remains fully human inside it. Rejection can mature dignity when the pain passes without poisoning speech. Restraint can build discipline when it creates more choice instead of more obsession. A long relationship can take the same force through stages that a young man rarely imagines. Attraction becomes familiarity, familiarity becomes knowledge, and knowledge survives enough conflict to share space with friendship, grief, humor, responsibility, and the strange privilege of watching another human being change across decades. That is why sexual force becomes such a serious teacher. It keeps entering life after the obvious sexual moment has ended. Our man is 52 when the same song appears again. 5 years have passed since the car ride. He is at a crowded anniversary party for friends. His wife is talking to someone across the room. The opening notes come through the speakers, and his body recognizes them immediately. The memory still arrives. That part is important. Freedom has never required amnesia. The balcony appears for a moment. The 27-year-old version of him appears with it. He can feel the old charge as history rather than instruction. Then he sees his wife across the room. She catches his eye. She knows the song now. There is a tiny smile between them because the secret lost its private throne years ago. He walks toward her. This is where the whole lesson becomes visible without another definition. The same cue reached the same body. The first time, the force pulled him out of the present and into an old identity. 5 years later, the cue becomes evidence of how far the route changed. The past still exists inside memory. The current life carries more weight. That is transmutation. The charge became recognition, then speech, then choice, then a deeper bond. The energy went somewhere different because the conscious being carrying it changed. That is the real answer to the title. Sexual energy goes into what it trains you to return toward. A body can become the first obvious destination, while the deeper route leads into the self-state that body represented. Fantasy can keep the route alive. Validation can turn the route into identity. Years of intimacy can turn the same force into a bond so layered that one familiar touch carries an entire shared life. Creative work can receive the pressure and give it form. Secrecy can trap the pressure inside two competing realities. Recognition can change the route again and send the same force toward a life that feels wider than the original urge. That is why consequence becomes the receipt. The question, where did the sexual energy go, eventually becomes personal because the answer is sitting inside repetition. After the charge passes, something has usually become easier to revisit. A certain image returns faster, a certain identity wakes faster, a certain kind of person feels familiar, a certain kind of risk starts feeling erotic. A certain relationship becomes deeper, a certain piece of work suddenly receives hours of focus. Then commitment enters the test. Desire and your word can point in different directions for a moment, and the next action shows which route has real authority. Pleasure fades. Whatever it trained can remain. That remainder is the receipt. The deepest sexual discipline is therefore bigger than fear of release and bigger than worship of restraint. It is the art of carrying creation force without letting one charged route become the whole map of life. Desire can remain alive. The body can remain honored. Pleasure can remain beautiful. Relationship can remain human. The ultimate reality remains larger than every wave moving through the system. You, as the conscious being moving through this body, learn command by seeing the force clearly enough to choose what receives your life next. Subscribe if you want the next LOT lesson to go deeper into sexual force, karma, and the body as a spiritual laboratory. At the anniversary party, his wife reaches him before the chorus. Years earlier, he answered her question with a quick "yeah" and disappeared into an old room inside himself. Now the song carries a different history too. The kitchen conversation lives inside it, beside the old balcony. So does the embarrassment he finally understood, the years in which being desired stopped acting like proof of youth, and the ordinary marriage that survived enough reality to become deeper than the old chase. He offers his hand. She laughs because he has never been a particularly good dancer. They step into the crowd anyway. The old cue keeps playing through the speakers. The old woman still belongs to his history. The younger man still belongs to his history. His body remembers both, and for the first time the song has no job to pull him backward.